the great Joel Edgerton.
This is for you.
Oh, why thank you so much. I don't know if I want to open this here or never. But, wow, dude, seriously, this was great. This was very, it was everything I wanted it to be.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, great.
absolutely, because I think it kind of, it plays off of the great sort of stalker thrillers that we've seen before, but takes it in different directions that we don't see coming. Let's start off by, first of all, I should point out that your brother Nash is in this movie as well, so it was kind of cool. Do you guys know, did anybody spot Nash? Does anybody know what Nash looks like? One person spotted Nash, all right. But
A few, yeah.
he's got a beard, he's one of the executives that worked with, yeah.
He was in the office, the author's office thing.
Yeah.
He also did a number of things behind the camera too for me. He started his career as a stunt guy, and so he coordinated the action and made sure everyone was safe for that stuff. He did a little bit of second unit directing of some driving stuff for me. He played the character in the movie, and he also is an editor. He's a bit of an overachiever, so he has about 4 credits in the movie.
When you guys first started up Blue Tongue Films, how long ago was that, first of all, when you kind of came together and decided to put together your own production?
So we started a company in 1996, and we started the company to, I'd graduated from drama school, and my brother was a stunt guy, and neither of us could get a job. So we decided we'd make a short film. It was his idea, let's make a short film that would have like an action scene in it, or like a little acting scene and then an action scene. So we made a little film called Loaded.
I think this is on. You want
It
to
is?
use it?
I
Yeah,
love projecting.
I'll talk loud. Go ahead.
So we made a short film as a calling card to get work, really. And the byproduct of that was that we realized we actually also enjoyed the process of making the film. And so then we went to make another short film. And I think since then, the collective of mostly men and one woman of Blue Tongue Films have made maybe about 30 short films, about 25 short films and about 7 features now.
It's fantastic.
But it took us a long time, and it was sort of our own film school because we never really got formally educated.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, if you guys have never seen The Square, it's excellent. You should absolutely
Yeah, my
check
brother
it out.
directed a movie called The Square in 2007, which I co-wrote and was in, and he's a really marvelous director. He also spends his time making video clips for Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Which he's made about 4 of them now.
Fantastic. Now, let's talk a little bit about this one. When did this first come about? And we also want to say a big thank you to STX Entertainment for bringing this to Dallas and allowing us to see it. You guys are the second guys to see this film.
Yeah, you're the second group to see the movie, apart from about 100 people that saw it yesterday in Chicago.
Right.
And yeah, STX, a big shout out to STX and Blumhouse. Blumhouse made the film in conjunction with STX, which is a new studio comprised of some very talented people who worked for other studios or ran other studios. And this is their first movie that they're releasing under their new branch. And I have the privilege of being their guinea pig film, which means that I have their full weight and enthusiasm and support. And the pressure of being the first. But
I think it's a great first film to kick things off with. It's
Thank
really, really good. Now, where did this? Yeah, go ahead, clap for me.
Thanks, Mom.
Where did this? Where did this idea come from? I mean, obviously, we've all had certain people in our lives, especially people that re-enter our lives, that you're kind of like, I don't know, do I really want to be friends with that guy? Or everybody's kind of had that moment.
Yeah,
But
Facebook is bringing them all back. Right? Hey, remember me?
Yeah.
Remember what you did to me?
Yeah.
There's friends with you.
There's a reason we didn't talk to these people after high school,
Yeah.
but sometimes it works out pretty good. But where did this particular idea come from?
I just sort of have these random ideas. There's a lot of ideas that I have that are just, that's all they are, and then some of them I feel very excited about. And when I had the idea of making a movie that was sort of about meeting your bully 20 so years after school, that to me was an exciting thing, because we all remember those experiences, whether we were mean at school, whether we were being mean, had people be mean to us or whether we witnessed it. It's something about school that's such a kind of, at the time, such a volatile place, you know, such a great place as well, but also can be a very dangerous place for kids and their just their general, you know, social well-being and health and all that stuff. And you remember those experiences, and I just, every time I run into a person now that I went to high school with, the more years that go by, it's harder to recognise them.
Yeah.
And but the memories, once you realise who they are so rich. And it just seemed like a good idea to me. And you know, being of a more analog era, you know, the idea of bringing Facebook into it, I think is something that wasn't really as interesting to me as just a kind of a random meeting in a furniture store. That also had the opportunity for Jason's character to handle that situation with grace, acknowledge the past, and so avoid what happens to him in the movie. But of course, his nature is of a different kind.
Yeah. Well, and I love the fact that we never really find out like what this guy's story is. Like, you don't know if he has a house. You know, he could just be like living out of that van, you know, doing trivia every night.
Yeah.
There's like no telling where this guy could really come from. And it also seems like it's a very topical thing because bullying is something that has been a lot in the news. You know, there's a lot of problems with it now in current schools. So I think that it's certainly coming at a good time, you know, where people could discuss it.
Yeah, and like, you know, to be very clear, you know, this film is a piece of entertainment, and to say that we're making an essay on bullying or you know, it really is a kind of a darker underbelly version of a bullying tale. And I know a lot of people who are doing very progressive things with anti-bullying. You have some friends of mine in Australia who are involved in the mixed martial arts world, have a very big campaign against bullying. And Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad, who's a friend of mine, his wife Lauren runs a company or an organisation called the Kind Campaign, which goes into high schools and educates high school girls, particularly girls, about what effect their words and actions can have on each other. And that's the area that really resonates for me in our film, as much as it is a piece of entertainment, is this idea that thing that your mum used to say to you, you know, sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt you, is kind of a lie when you're a kid, because they do hurt.
Yeah.
And the things that we do say to each other, they can stick and they can have an effect on not just you, but the circle of friends around you and the way that you're judged and perceived. And that to me was very important in this, is that the idea, as it keeps resonating in this film, that an idea can take a hold and really bring a person down.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's ideas in the film that I think are very important to me about being able to acknowledge the past. How do you conduct yourself, whether you're able to change or not, all sort of, you know, wrapped up,
Right.
excuse the pun, in this thriller.
Yeah. And the long-term effects of, you know, what does that do to a person several years down the line?
Yeah, and also be careful about what your judgment of your actions is. For you, it's one thing, but for the person who was on the receiving end, it could be a very different thing. And to be mindful, I guess, of other people and their receiving of your mean-spiritedness.
Yeah. I'm also curious, when you wrote this, was there, in your head, did you think about the fact that there is a long stretch of the film where Gordo is not seen, which obviously gives you more freedom as a director to be behind the camera instead of in front of the camera. And I was kind of thinking like, wow, that's brilliant, the way that he constructed this, that it gave you time to concentrate on just directing. Was that conscious when you wrote it?
No, well, it's interesting you say that. The fact that Gordo goes missing for a certain amount of the time was part of the reason why I ended up being okay with being in the film as well as directing the film. I had thought about letting it go, but the initial push to write the screenplay was that this would be cool. I'm gonna play this character, and I'll get someone to direct the movie. But I fell in love with the story, and then I ended up doing both things. But when I wrote the film, I thought all these great movies that I remember watching, like Fatal Attraction and Cape Fear, and those triangle thrillers that are about a seemingly well-meaning couple having a fresh start or whatever, are besieged by a crazy third party.
Yeah.
I had this instinct that those movies were going to help me and allow me to do something different once the dog goes missing, that we feel, all right, here we're going to saddle up to something akin to Fatal Attraction, and the next thing that's going to happen is the cutlery drawer is going to open up and people are going to start bleeding. And I wanted to do something different with it and allow that then to become the tension of this marriage starting to sort of fold in on itself. And those movies, as I mentioned, I think they allow us as a filmmaking team to create a tension that he's got to come back. How is he going to come back? In what way is he going to do it? You know, what's the damage he's going to cause?
Yeah.
And just allow that to kind of be unsettling rather than overtly violent.
Yeah. I think it's brilliantly executed. Should I really open this? Should I
You
open
should.
This? Okay. I'm going to open the gift. So it's been nice knowing all of you. We'll find out what you brought me here. But yeah, that wasn't creepy at all the way you brought it into me.
But
Oh, wow. I just got back from San Diego Comic-Con, and so this is very timely.
Gordo saw you there.
Yeah, he probably was there. This is a Marvel Comics set of coasters and glasses for Gordo and I to have drinks together. So, very, very cool. Well, thank you for the gift. I appreciate it. I tell you what, let's take some questions from the audience. I know you guys have to have some burning questions. Who would like to kick it off? We'll start right here with you.
Were you ever bullied as a young child?
Was I ever bullied? Yeah, and to be very honest, I've been both Simon and Gordo in my life through high school. You know, I was a mean kid for a couple of years there as I was a young teenager. And then as I was about 14 or 15, I was severely bullied by a kid at my school, and it kind of taught me a bit of a lesson about being on the other side of things. And I also witnessed a lot of it, you know. But thankfully I wasn't, you know, I know kids and I know friends of mine who spent their entire high school kind of leaving home every morning somewhat terrified to go to school. And I think a lot of people have that experience. And I also think that a lot of the, you know, as I had a lot of discussions with people, a lot of the people who would acknowledge that they had been mean to other kids, either in a group setting or you know, individually kind of targeting somebody, that a lot of that came from residue in their own life of feeling like they were bullied in a family environment and then kind of lashed out on a personal level at school as a way to somehow regain control. And there's a lot of guilt surrounding that kind of action.
Right there, sir.
Why the apparent contradiction in Gordo's letter where he said, let bygones be bygones, and then when Simon offered him the apology, he said it's too late for that. I realized at that point he had already taken liberties with Simon's wife, but he could have buried those tapes so that Simon never saw it, and it still would have been a dead non-issue at that point. And he would still have his satisfaction or revenge or whatever he was looking for.
There's a lot of kind of careful plotting in film, and you know, there's a lot of things that are open for interpretation too. One of the things I've been asked is, you know, is this a kind of a long revenge that Gordo has been tracking Simon for his whole life? And I say, well, I mean, the clues are there in the movie too, that it's really just random bumping into an old, you know, bully from high school. They simply sort of run into each other. And that there's an opportunity there from Gordo's perspective. And one of the beauties for me writing the movie and playing the movie and playing in the movie is that we're never really in Gordo's perspective. We never really see exactly what he's doing. We never really know exactly what he's thinking. I have my own thoughts and ideas about that, and some of them I won't necessarily share because I think it's fun for people to make up their own minds. But I did feel like going into it, I thought there's a big difference between making a movie where someone is actively seeking revenge opposed to somebody who meets someone that has treated them terribly in life and sits back kind of feeling like, wow, you're seemingly being very nice to me and I'm going to accept that friendship, because if I can accept that friendship, that's a victory unto itself, and that can almost rewrite history. But if you're not being genuine, then I might do something. That was one thing. And so in that letter, that bygones be bygones really is a genuine feeling. But the way he's written it is, I really was willing to let bygones be bygones. Meaning at that moment, I may have already changed my mind.
Yeah, and there's also so many moments where, like, when she invites him in, where you kind of question, like, if she had not invited him in, how far would this have gone? And I think that makes it more interesting too. Like, it's not entirely Gordo's fault in a way, because they opened the door for him in certain instances.
Yeah, and he's got a very. I didn't want to be too overt about the Old Testamentness of Gordo's sort of framework of justice, but his opinion of eye for an eye and the balanced ledger of moral conscience and so on is very much alive in his character, I think, and there are traces of it, and as I say, I didn't want to be too overt about it. But the idea that, the movie is very simplistic in its moral structure and moral terms, that good is waiting for the good and bad is waiting for the bad, that in that sense you could really kind of have a different understanding of what may or may not happen between him and Robert.
Yeah, right here.
First of all, I love the movie. At what point did Gordo's intentions go malicious? Was it enough?
For those that didn't hear it in the back, at what point does Gordo's intentions go malicious?
Well, to me, it's very much the moment he's in the kitchen and he sees that. Well, I suspect that Gordo, this is for me, between the lines too, that the moment Simon puts his hand on Gordo's shoulder at the beginning of the film and says, "It's really good to see you and you look well," and all those sort of compensation comments about, when really he just wants to get the hell out of there. But every kind of moment they're face to face, there's a seeming genuine attitude from Simon towards Gordo, and I suspect that he is waiting for the truth. And it comes in the form of something so kind of simple and childish that it becomes the test that is the dinner party at the mansion.
Right here. I'll get to you in a second. Right here. Yes,
Yeah.
you.
Who's the father of the
That's for you to decide.
Are you the devil?
That's for you to decide. That's the one thing I won't. I have my opinions about that too. I'll talk to you outside if you want. But no, I think the clue. Well, all I'll say is that the clues are there, and there's a certain movie that I was willing to make, and a certain movie that I was not willing to make. But I also didn't want to hand everybody all of the answers, so they are there. Come and watch it a second time.
Yeah. Well, and he has that line where he says, "You see what happens when you mess with people's minds," and that's kind of the point. It's like he may never know. He may never actually know, but it's doomed his life forever.
It's enough to have
Yeah.
destroyed Simon's conscience.
Yeah. Now I've given you what you gave me. Right here.
Yeah, so my question was kind of similar to hers. So you wanted to leave it up to the audience for the final scene, did he or didn't he? But so you obviously have your own choice. So, but what are your thought process writing that scene?
Well, I wanted to take us to a point where, as I say, the kind of clues are there for me, and they're there. There's clues that will give you the answer, I think. At the same time, they're not as out in the open as you might expect. To me, this may be a clue in some ways, that to me the film really is and it's actually strangely kind of a line that's said by the chiropractor. It's amazing how an idea can take a hold and really bring a person down. And this is kind of the whole theme of Gordo's revenge to me in this movie. That it's a planning of a different kind of seed in a way. It's a planning of an idea in a kind of very primal way, an attack on Simon, but it does have an idea of what should be waiting for good people and what should be waiting for bad people. So whether she's collateral damage or not is up to you to decide. But
Anybody else? Up here at the top.
In the scene where they're in Gordo's house, was that ad-libbed by Jason Bateman with the finger in the pants, or was that?
There was always a little bit of artistic license with Jason in a really, really great way. In fact, I had that with a number of the actors in the film. It's like once the script is there, as long as if it changes, as long as it moves in a positive direction and stays within the realm of what you need from it. So I was about to laugh because you know when you make a Hollywood movie that gets released on a lot of screens, they do the testing process. You know, they get a bunch of people together and they show an early cut of the movie and they start to learn from what people are thinking or how they're interpreting the movie. And one of the things that they write on these cards is like least favorite scene or favorite scene. And I remember reading on one card, favorite scene, Jason finger penis. And we debated long and hard about, because we did versions with and versions without. But that scene of mocking was very much written, and Jason just sort of adorned it with the beautiful way that he can. In fact, one interesting thing was, Jason, if you could, say a person has their particular person-isms, Jason-isms or Bateman-isms, he is one of the only people I know that can play the straight man but get the laughs. And I wanted Simon as a character to not be always the smartest guy in the room or the guy that always had the easy joke. It served us in a certain section of the movie, like the beginning of the movie, but as we progress further into the movie, we wanted to finesse that. So, Jason would offer up these things and they were there for us to use or not use. And it was really interesting how we orchestrated that in the cut. It's like if there was too much humour, it did one thing. If there was not enough, it did another thing. So we just cherry-picked the right moments for us to enjoy him as a character in those areas where we're still with the couple together, feeling like we trust him, feeling like we like him. And particularly cast Jason for a couple of reasons, that he is that guy that we're all familiar with knowing, trusting and liking. And he has an incredible ability that I think is somewhat untapped in this sort of realm of able to do the other thing, play the drama and also be a jerk.
Yeah.
And do it well.
It's
I don't know how you felt, but a lot of people I know that we were watching the movie just going, he's really good at being a jerk.
He was. And that's also kind of a throwback to that childish high school behavior which started this all to begin with in the first place. So.
Yeah, and there were always two versions of the character in my mind as I was writing it. Either he was that kind of high school jock who lived by his kind of physique and his muscle and his good looks, or there was the kind of more lived by his wits, kind of, funniest guy in class, could kind of talk his way out of any situation, slick kind of guy. And I actually thought that was a more interesting version of the character, because there's something more subversive about a human being when they can use their brain to undermine other people rather than just do that.
Yeah. Anybody else? Up here in the orange shirt.
Me?
Yeah.
First off, great job.
Thank you.
I'm wondering a couple of things, like your influences for going in this direction. As I was watching this, first off with Jason, I thought that was an interesting choice to pick him, because I remember him on a sitcom in the mid-'80s where he was that slick little fast talker, and look, and I can't remember the name of that show. It was him and his.
Anybody know?
It's him and Sandy Duncan, right?
No, it wasn't Sandy Duncan.
We didn't have that show in Australia. We had the next one that he did. I remember the first time I saw Jason was in Teen Wolf 2.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
T-O-O.
Yeah.
That's right.
When I was watching this, that was what I was picturing, was that kid having grown up, and early on.
Yeah, he was a little con artist.
Yeah, he was, and early on, to me, his douchiness was showing up a lot when he was meeting the bosses and trying to make his wife, making her kind of feel bad, but also, like she was part of the rich and successful, hot shots in the room.
Yeah.
And I thought it was great that you chose that. So but as far as your influences go, this had a lot of Hitchcock to me. I mean, some of these elements of not knowing who your husband is felt like Dial M for Murder in some aspects. And just, are you a Hitchcock fan?
I'm a very big Hitchcock fan, and as a result of that, there are a lot of movies that obviously came in the last 3 or 4 decades that I'm a big fan of too, and also movies like The Shining and Rosemary's Baby had a big influence on me. Michael Haneke is a big favourite new filmmaker of mine of the last 10 years, and movies like Cache really taught me that you don't have to see the villain all the time for you to be incredibly unsettled by where he or she may be and what he or she may do. And that also in Cache, the idea that information became threatening, and that was a big thing for me, that this letter is so important and it creates such a massive turn for the couple. Just the phrase "bygones be bygones," when that stuff isn't honest and out on the table from Jason's character, it becomes a big hand grenade. But in terms of those influences, I love thrillers. It's funny because my taste as an actor is slightly different from my taste as a writer and now as a director. But I love thrillers, and I'd happily make another one. But I often what I really loved was thrillers where the villain was a human being that could exist in any one of our lives, rather than, with all respect to monster movies and supernatural movies that terrify me as well, there was something extra about where the villain was someone that could live in the neighbourhood, and even in our movie, stretching to make that villain someone who may live under your own roof, but also that had some kind of social resonance as well. Like, as I say, this is definitely a piece of entertainment, but there are ideas within it that I find resonate with me and hopefully with other people about what is our nature and do we change. And also, like, at what age could you say that you could blame your actions on the child version of yourself? Almost like you've built a bridge into adulthood, and anything that existed before the bridge is like you're not culpable for. What point do we become an adult? At what point should we still remain able to turn back, acknowledge the past, and make a firm acknowledgement of those things? Be able to apologise rather than, as Jason's character does, sort of manifest destiny. Keep moving forward. Do not look back. Keep making money. Don't acknowledge anything. And sorry is a weakness.
I saw one over here that I didn't get to. No? Did they cover it already? Right here.
What can you tell us about the story behind making the movie? When did you write it? How easy or difficult was to fund it? A little bit about how it was made.
I think a lot of people assume that if you're an actor that you could just go like that and people will come running with money and go, hey, whatever you want to do, just do it, which is not true. And thankfully it's not true. I wrote this movie starting in 2010. I was working on a movie called The Thing, a prequel to The Thing, and it was very special effects driven. So I had a lot of spare time. And when I have a lot of spare time, I tend to do a lot of writing. And I wrote very carefully and thoroughly and continuously over those next few years. And then I met Rebecca Hall, who's my producing partner. She's Australian, but she's married to Curtis Hanson, lives in America. She used to program the Sundance Film Festival and then the LA Film Festival, and has produced movies like Kite Runner, Anvil, Story of Anvil, the documentary, and also the Motorcycle Diaries. So a very consummate producer. And together then we started looking for money, and we partnered with Blumhouse after a couple of false starts with other people who promised money. And Blumhouse were very serious. Jason Blum is a very straight up and honest guy and calls a spade a spade. And I immediately enjoyed working with him. And he, to his credit, was like, I know this is not my typical movie. It's not the typical kind of red title, buckets of blood movie, but I love it and I'd really like to make it. And together we partnered with STX. So it's been a long road. At first, a little bit clunky, but when Jason said he wanted to make it, he was true to his word, and then things moved very quickly. I mean, and this is how quickly we started in November, we shot January, February, and we're already here about to release the movie, which for anybody involved in making movies, usually it's an 8 to 12 month period before you release a movie after production. I literally handed the movie in 3-4 days ago. The final print of the movie. There you go. And I wasn't late. It wasn't like my homework was late. That was the schedule,
That's amazing. That's really incredible. Well, just to wrap this up, did I miss anybody? Oh, there was one way up at the top. Yeah.
So what made you title it The Gift?
Okay. What made you title it The Gift?
I had a title, when I first wrote the script, the title of the film was Weirdo. It's actually a really interesting thing because I decided through this process I learned a lot about movies, titling movies, marketing movies, and I decided my job was to make the best movie that I could make, and I was going to not presume to do other people's jobs better than they did them. And the feeling was that there was a really great marketing kind of campaign behind calling this movie something else, in particular this. That Weirdo itself was sort of a smaller title that in a slightly wrong way made the film more about Gordo when in actual fact the movie was about the couple, and particularly Jason's evolution and Rebecca's, Robin's major evolution from being an agreeable kind of wife to this guy to stepping out from that control. So we wanted to find a kind of a broader title. So that it was a title that came out of, it was another different idea of mine. And for a while I was really holding on to calling the movie Weirdo. But I'm very glad that we changed the title now.
Yeah. Well, just to wrap this up, you've played a lot of really great characters. We've seen you play Ramses in Exodus. We've seen you play, we've seen you play in The Great Gatsby. They always say that actors think it's most fun when you get to play the bad guy.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, do you personally see Gordo as a bad guy? Or do you think that maybe he's just a guy who is finally getting his chance to get back at somebody? And does that make him a bad guy?
The thing with me is I don't ever see any characters as bad or good. And there are some of all of their own actions, and they're perceived by the audience as being good or bad. And I think one of the worst things as an actor that you can do is start to judge your own character and therefore start to view it from the outside. And without getting too esoteric about it, if you perceive that, I always perceived that Tom Buchanan was the star of his own movie, that quite rightly Gatsby is the villain of, because he's stealing my wife, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was always the great way of viewing characters, and therefore you can then have a lot of fun with them, because therefore you can allow it allows for more room for the audience to understand and even at times feel empathy for a character that should be bad. And I think that makes the whole story more interesting. That if you can sort of feel empathy for a character like Tom Buchanan. And it always came from me from watching The Twelfth Night, the Shakespeare play. Is anyone familiar with that play? Because I call it the Malvolio theory. Malvolio is this character who you hate for like the most of the play. You think the guy's the biggest jerk in the world. He's against all the main characters. And then you find out at the end that he's actually, the reason he's doing it is because he's in love with the Queen and he thinks the Queen needs him to be a bad guy. And someone writes him a love letter. The heroes write him this love letter and say, from the Queen, saying, I love you too. And tomorrow, if you love me as well, you'll wear yellow stockings with a black cross garter stitch thing. And then I'll know secretly that you love me. And this guy puts on this foolish outfit, and right at the end of the play, and he's thrown in jail for it, this guy that you hate, you suddenly go, this guy's, his fault is that he loves somebody, And it was such a great lesson. And the lesson was that, we're all the sum of our actions. And if we're doing more bad things than good, at the end of the day, we'll be judged as a bad guy. But we're allowed to be both things, and we're allowed to change at any moment. And that's the beauty for me of like diving into any character, and therefore it's sometimes more interesting to play the bad guys because you're looking for the lightness,
Yeah.
and that's the challenge.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you guys will please spread the word, tweet about it, Facebook about it, let all your friends know that you saw it before they did, and you're better than them because of it. And
You're literally better than anybody.
and take a friend to see it and see how they feel about it. My huge thanks to Mr. Joel Edgerton for coming to Dallas. Thank you guys for coming out. Have a good night, and thank you for the gift.